Taking you back right now to the major news coming out of Washington that we've been following. The release of WNBA star Brittney Griner after nearly 300 days behind bars in Russia. Dr. Deandra Moss is a close friend of WNBA star Brittney Griner. She joins us now live. Deandra, big news today. Probably some of the best news that you have heard for a while, I'm imagining. Brittney finally coming home after 294 days in a Russian prison. How are you feeling right now?
I feel relieved, to be honest. And just to be completely open, I was worried. I didn't think that she would come home, you know. There was a moment where there wasn't a lot of movement, and they already were kind of, you know, tight-lipped about, like, the progress that was going on behind the scenes. So I was worried that this would extend on, you know, well into the new year. So to hear and to wake up, I woke up this morning, my mom was calling me. She said, Brittney's out, Brittney's out. I was like, what? And I just couldn't really believe it. But I feel relieved that she's going to be back with her family, with Sherelle, her wife, and she's on that plane right now. It just makes the holidays even sweeter knowing that she'll be able to spend it home in the United States. It's really, it was a nice phone call to wake up to this morning with that news.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. And, you know, as you speak, I can hear the fear in your voice, and I can imagine how concerned you have been this whole time. While Brittney was being held in that Russian prison, were you able to speak with anyone in her family? Were you able to speak with Sherelle?
I haven't spoken with Sherelle because at this time it's difficult to. It's only so much consolidation that you can do. It's just something that we just can't imagine. I mean, you know, I've had people very close to me who have been incarcerated, none to this magnitude in a Russian prison. It's just something that many of us can't really relate to. So the best thing that we could do was only thing we could do is uplift Brittney's voice, keep sharing her message, her name via social media, to show support and to make sure that she isn't forgotten about, and that we continue to spread positivity and love to her wife and her other family members. But I imagine I'll connect with them shortly after things kind of die down and they have their time together, which is most important. Like, you know, there's going to be trauma and things, downstream impacts of this later on. So it's best to give them their space and to let them decompress. That's the best thing I can do.
Absolutely. You know, I wanted to ask you about your own personal experience, because I understand that you have played for a Ukrainian basketball league. What is the experience like as a player who is playing for a team that is overseas? And what was going through your mind when you had heard that she had been basically taken captive by the Russians?
You know, when I played with the Ukraine, the national team, you have to understand that the world we live in the United States is such a bubble. It's such a bubble. Life exists, reality exists outside of the norms that we have here in the States. And to have that lived-in experience, that day-to-day life, those day-to-day interactions, and to see a glimpse of just the differences, infrastructure-wise, culture-wise, basic things from grocery stores and shopping malls, the streets and how they're paved, and just the norms and customs of the people. Like, it's scary because you're unfamiliar with it. It'd be one thing to be, you know, in jail in the States, a place where you're familiar, where people speak the same language as you. You still don't want to be there. But that does give you a little bit more comfort being somewhere else where things are just totally different. So when I first heard of her being detained, obviously I was at great worry, because they just don't share the same cultures and values that we do as Americans, especially someone like Brittney, who's totally unique in her own right and is a public figure and all that she encompasses. So I was just worried that that it turned into exactly what it turned into, a political game. But the relief is there that she's home. So it's just very scary just because of the differences. And the difference is you can't really understand by just taking a trip to visit, you know, a holiday or a vacation. No, we have lived there. We know the streets by name. We eventually start speaking the language. These are lived in experiences, which are very different than just taking a holiday to Moscow or taking a trip to Kyiv. And so that's what makes it so much more real, because we understand it so closely. It's just very unfortunate that she even had to go through all that. But we can rejoice now that she's going to be coming home and she's safe, she's alive. And I know that was something that we all need to understand. Like, there was no guarantee that she was going to get out of here. There was no guarantee that she would make it back on that plane. You know, we're talking about Vladimir Putin, who seemingly they had a problem with some vape cartridges, but decided to invade Ukraine and decided to bomb hospitals with children and homes and schools. So there was no guarantee that she would make it here. So the relief, I just can't say it enough. And that's just felt through people who don't even know Brittney. It's almost like you start to know her, which I think is tremendous, because you don't want that ever for anyone to have to go through that.
Absolutely. You know, you give us such a unique perspective as a fellow basketball player. So it's wonderful that you're here with us today. And I'm sure, Deandra, that there are a lot of things that Brittney is going to have to do, many things on her agenda as soon as she returns. But do you know how soon you'll see her again?
I would imagine it'll be some time. Like, these next couple months are going to be pivotal for her. And I say that because when something traumatic like that hits, it's almost like, you know, grief. It comes in stages. Like, one moment you can be feeling really good and ecstatic that you're home. The next moment you're just feeling in shambles and things start to come back to you. She has a lot to process about not only her career as a basketball player, but just as a woman, and just kind of processing all of that in these moments where she's no longer in danger. You know, in a penal colony or in a tiny cell as tall as she is, it's going to take some time. I would imagine when they can decompress, when her family can get together and she's in a better space and she's ready to receive community, because sometimes that takes time. Like, you have all the flood of these people and all the supporters from not only from the WNBA community, from the NBA community, from other sports leagues. You have people who weren't interested in sports at all. All of a sudden, they're now interested in what was going on with Brittney just because they give a damn. So it's going to take some time, and we have to be sensitive to that. I'm going to be sensitive to that and respect her. I would hope sometime next year we would get together and as she will with her other WNBA friends and peers, because we all are just so happy to have her back. But that's just going to be up to her, and I think that's something we have to respect. But it'll be a time and a place for that, and I think we'll all rejoice and we'll have a drink or two and really celebrate the fact that she's here.
Absolutely. Deandra Moss, thank you so much for your time today. We're so happy that you will finally be able to say hello to Brittney in person. Some great news coming out of Washington today. Deandra Moss, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Veronica.